All right, let's just jump right into this. In today's explainer, we're going to unpack exactly why slot machines are literally 10 times more addictive than your standard lottery. Now, you might be wondering, why is it that losing a few bucks on a weekly lotto ticket feels like, just a harmless, fleeting disappointment, but sitting at a rapid-fire slot machine can fundamentally restructure your brain chemistry? Well, it all comes down to speed. The lottery is a slow burn, right? You buy a ticket and you wait days for the result. Maybe you play once or twice a week. But a modern slot machine, you're looking at 10 to 12 events every single minute. That rapid-fire, nonstop pace, it's basically the perfect environment for conditioning the human mind.
So, to really grasp why this speed is so dangerous, we've got to ask kind of a counterintuitive question. Why is the act of simply not knowing so incredibly addictive? Back in the late 90s, neuroscientists stumbled onto something absolutely fascinating about dopamine, the brain's pleasure and motivation chemical. They found out that our brains actually release the most dopamine during moments of total uncertainty. So the massive surge, it doesn't actually happen when you win the money. No, it happens during that intense moment of uncertainty just before the outcome is revealed. It's a phenomenon called the dopamine prediction error, and it means the anticipation itself creates a profound neurological high.
And this brilliantly illustrates a concept called variable ratio reinforcement. Now, I know that sounds like a bunch of clinical jargon, but it's actually super simple to grasp. It just means that payouts are totally unpredictable and happen at completely random intervals. Think about it. If a slot machine paid out on exactly every 10th spin, your brain would figure out the pattern pretty quickly, get completely bored, and you just walk away. But because you never know if that win is going to drop on the next spin, or the 20th, or the 100th, your brain's reward system stays hyper-engaged. The randomness literally prevents your mind from ever losing interest. So here's the absolute crucial takeaway. The anticipation is the drug. For someone struggling with compulsive gambling, the primary neurochemical reward is actually happening in those agonizing yet thrilling seconds right before the symbols lock into place. What this means is that a player can experience intense neurological satisfaction even while they're actively losing money. The brain is getting exactly what it wants, that powerful hit of dopamine, simply from the mere possibility that a win might be right around the corner. Now, what's truly mind-blowing is how our brains actually handle losing. When researchers look at functional MRI scans of gamblers, they see this wild cognitive anomaly known as the near-miss effect. Let's say you play a slot machine, right? You get 2 jackpot symbols, but that third one lands just an inch away from the pay line. Now, your logical mind knows you lost, obviously, but your brain's reward center, it lights up at 75 to 90% of the exact same intensity as an actual financial win. Your brain is literally physically processing that close loss as a partial victory. Pretty crazy, right? The truly tragic part of all this is that modern electronic gambling machines are meticulously, mathematically engineered to exploit this exact neurobiology. They use this thing called virtual real mapping. Basically, computer algorithms are programmed to display high-value symbols just above or below the pay line, which creates artificial near misses way more often than random chance would ever allow. They also use unbalanced reels to give you this false sense of progression. And perhaps most deceptively, they use what's called losses disguised as wins. Check this out. If you bet $10 and the machine pays you back $2, you just lost $8. But the machine doesn't care. It's still going to flash lights, ring bells, and play celebratory music. It completely hijacks your sensory feedback to mask the reality that you just lost money. All of these engineered deceptions work together to create what psychologists call the illusion of control. By adding interactive little elements, like a button that lets you manually stop those spinning reels, the machine is actively tricking your brain into thinking you're actually developing a skill. But the reality? The outcome was mathematically determined by a random number generator the exact millisecond you hit the spin button. Pressing stop does absolutely nothing to change the result. Nothing at all. But your brain still feels this false sense of physical agency over an event that's governed entirely by random chance. And this illusion, it takes really deep root in our psychology. In fact, research by Paul Del Fabro and Anthony Weinfeld showed that 75% of all thoughts verbalized by regular slot machine players during play are completely, entirely irrational. 75%. Players will start personifying the machines, believing a machine is somehow due for a jackpot, or they'll attribute a totally random outcome to their own personal timing or strategy. The logical mind just gets completely blinded, and it fosters this totally erroneous belief that if you just persist, or maybe time your button presses a little better, you'll eventually beat the odds. actually want to just pause here for a second because honestly, understanding the science can be really overwhelming, especially if it hits close to home. So I want to remind you, if you or someone you know struggles with compulsive or problem gambling, free help is available 24 hours a day by calling 1-800-GAMBLER. It's a completely safe, non-judgmental harbor, and you absolutely do not have to navigate this stuff alone. Okay, getting back to the science, this psychological hijacking inevitably takes a very real physical toll on the body. When scientists put individuals with gambling disorder into brain scanners, the neural patterns they see aren't just similar, they are nearly identical to the patterns seen in chronic cocaine addiction. Think about that for a second. The brain physically does not distinguish between the rush of a slot machine payout and the high from a chemical substance. The whole reward engine has been completely hijacked. And because the brain is suddenly being flooded with these totally unnatural levels of dopamine, it has to adapt to protect itself. We call this tolerance. The brain literally starts shutting down its active dopamine receptors. This is exactly why a person who used to genuinely enjoy betting $1 suddenly feels absolutely nothing unless they're betting $10 or $50 or even $100. The brain's reward center, the ventral striatum, becomes completely blunted to everyday natural joys. And this is so incredibly important to understand. This is not a moral failing, not at all. It is a physical, biological restructuring of the brain. This biological shift ends up causing a really dangerous imbalance. On one hand, you have the amygdala, that's the brain's emotional center. It gets super hyperactive. Just seeing an image of a casino or a betting app on your phone can trigger a visceral physical craving, like a racing heart and super narrowed attention. Meanwhile, on the other hand, the prefrontal cortex, which is your brain's executive braking system, the part responsible for impulse control, it literally deteriorates. The physical white matter connections actually degrade. So you end up with a brain where the emotional gas pedal is jammed to the floor and the logical brakes have been physically completely worn out. It's a really complex pathology, and it actually goes way beyond just dopamine, hijacking multiple neurotransmitter systems all at once. So while dopamine is driving that tolerance and the desperate need for higher stakes, you also have reduced serotonin, which makes it physically harder to resist impulses and delay gratification. Add altered glutamate transmission into the mix, and that literally locks in the habit, making it nearly impossible to change strategies or just walk away, even when you're facing back-to-back losses. Understanding this neurochemistry is the absolute key to stripping away the shame of addiction. It's a biological mechanism, plain and simple, not a weakness of character. But here is the really empowering news. And honestly, it's the core philosophy of this whole explainer and what we always say. Control your emotions, control your outcomes. Because, look, just as the brain can be restructured by a machine, the brain is also incredibly plastic. It can heal. The prefrontal cortex can absolutely be strengthened. Those neural pathways can be rewired, and your emotional control can be meticulously rebuilt over time. There is a way out. Rebuilding that control relies entirely on small, actionable, daily habits. Think of them as basically physical therapy for your brain's braking system. First up is the 10-second pause. Whenever an urge hits you, force yourself to wait just 10 seconds before doing anything. That tiny little window, it gives your prefrontal cortex a moment to boot up and actually challenge the amygdala's impulse. Second is environmental distance. Unsubscribe from those casino emails, install website blockers, and maybe even change your driving route so you don't pass triggering spots. And finally, daily mindfulness. Just taking a few minutes a day to sit quietly and focus on your breathing actually strengthens the exact frontal regions of your brain that govern your self-control. You see, emotional control isn't just something you're magically born with. It's a daily practice. By really understanding the science behind these variable ratios, the artificial near misses, and those sneaky dopamine prediction errors, you can finally begin to see right through the engineered illusion of the machine. You start to recognize that, hey, it's not luck, and it's certainly not skill, it's literally just math designed to exploit human biology. And waking up to that truth, that is the first absolutely crucial step toward taking back your agency. Thanks so much for joining me for this explainer. If you found this breakdown of the psychology of gambling helpful at all, please go ahead and like the video, share it with someone who might really need to hear it right now, drop a comment with your thoughts below, and of course subscribe to the channel. Let's keep working on mastering our minds and controlling our outcomes together. So I'll leave you with this. The next time you hear those flashing bells and sirens, ask yourself, are you playing the machine or is the machine playing you? Catch you in the next one.